today's episode of Creative Conversations with GG Mompiere, we're going to be speaking about mindful consumption and how everything that we take in affects our output. Whether it's our energetic output, our physical output, our emotional output, and especially our creative outputs. Stay tuned for today's episode where we talk about what mindful consumption is, ways that not practicing mindful consumption can be detrimental, and how you can be more intentional and active with your consumption. Hope you like today's episode. Hey there, creatives. Welcome back to another episode of Creative Conversations with GG Mompiere. Today's episode is going to be about mindful consumption and how what we take in affects what we put out. Starting off with, what is mindful consumption? Mindful consumption is being intentional about what we allow into our mental, emotional, and creative spaces. These spaces include spaces of media, things that we're watching on TV, things that we're scrolling past and liking on social media, the books in the newspapers that we decide to read, conversations that we have with our coworkers, our family, friends, environments, physical or emotional environments that we set ourselves up to be in, and also the energy that we invite to ourselves anytime we're in these spaces or participating in these conversations. Mindful consumption is being intentional with how you show up and what you receive and put out into all these spaces. What we consume subtly shapes our thoughts, ideas, and even our creative direction. Constant exposure to something negative or stress-inducing can cloud your creativity. While if you consume something that sparks your inspiration and provokes your thoughts, it can enhance your creativity. Through research using the National Library of Medicine, I was able to find out that 95% of our brain activity is subconscious. 95 frickin' percent. I'm thinking maybe 65, even early 70s. I think 70s I thought was pushing it, but 95% of your brain activity is subconscious. Our brains are constantly processing information in the background, even when we're not aware of it. This affects our moods, our thinking patterns, and our creative instincts. Different types of consumption impact your creativity. One type of consumption being media. I brought it up earlier that media can be everything from television, music, books, social media, even podcast. Depending on the subject matter and the topics and the amount of time that you're spending doing these things or intaking these things, it can elevate your creativity, stifle your creativity, or even just hold you off from tapping into your creativity. Binge watching a TV show all day can be great for you to figure out the storyline and immerse yourself into something. But is that something that you really want to be spending your entire day doing? Don't get me wrong. I love a good day in bed. But how many of those days in bed could you have used making something? How many of those days in bed can you have used using that 5% consciousness that you have? Another type of consumption that people don't really consider as ways of consumption are the people that you have around you, as well as the conversations that you're having with these people. People have different energies that they carry with them. It could be positive, it can be negative. Some people have strong energies. Some people's energies are a bit more reserved. It all depends and varies by person. Certain conversations that you have with people can change the trajectory of your day if you allow it. Depending on the weight and the topic of the conversation, it doesn't matter if you allow it or not, unless you have that mental resilience to not let something like that affect you on a deeper level. But if you're constantly exposing yourself to something, either you're going to learn how to pivot around it or you're going to consume it, and it's going to become a part of your attitude, and it's going to become something that drains you. An example that I can think of is within my workspace, there are people that aren't fans of how things are handled. They aren't fans of the work that they have to do. And I don't think there's anyone out there that can say they 100% love their job. There's always some downside to anything that we do. And I have my complaints as well. Every now and then I could feel like, okay, definitely things could be shaped better for my work experience not to be so difficult. But this is the experience that I signed up for. This is the experience that pays my bills. I'm not going to keep complaining too much about something that I prayed for God to give me. But not everyone thinks that way. I have two coworkers that one is no longer a coworker. They actually left. But I had two coworkers that consistently complain to me every conversation we have, every single shift about the workspace. This started becoming such a pattern that I started feeling drained before my shifts that I had to interact with them. I was dreading the shifts that I had with these people. Not saying that these people were bad people and that they have bad energy. It was just the consistent negativity that came with a conversation with them. Every time I had a conversation with them, became an attachment to the energy that I associate with them. Even though they can be nice, even though they have their perks, there's just this little ball and chain that they carry with them, and they want me to carry it alongside them every time we see each other. Engaging with negative, judgmental people versus supportive, positive people can affect how we feel about exploring. If I were to continue to engage in these negative conversations about how much the workplace is dislikable, I wouldn't focus on the good things that came with this workspace. There's positive parts of the workspace that invited me and made me want to have this job here, made me do the research for the interview. If I kept feeding into that negative energy that people are trying to feed me, it would dampen my work performance. Because I promise you, the two people that are always complaining to me are not our top performers. Let me tell you that much. Environments that we place ourselves in can impact our mental clarity and our creativity. If you're always surrounded by things that don't align or spark your creative interest or cater to having thought provoking interactions, it's going to be a lot harder for you to just spark something up like that. I would say if you're not the smartest person, no, if you're the smartest person in the room, you could be in the wrong room. Social media is a large part of modern consumption. It is a double edged sword for creativity. Social media can have you in a sense of a comparison trap where you're constantly consuming other people's highlight reels, other people's photos, and it could lead to you having some self doubt and comparison issues. We're all seeing people within a certain age groups living the lives that we thought we were going to live at that age. I'm 25 years old, and other 25-year-olds are having babies, getting married, already starting and getting comfortable in their careers, buying houses. And I just moved back in with my mom. Seeing my peers on social media, I love seeing them excel, but there's times when I'm not feeling my best that I look at that and I can't help but think of, where did I go wrong? And I'm too focused on thinking, where did I go wrong, instead of where can I do better? Where can I improve? Where can I feed into myself and pour into myself? That comparison trap can get real negative real fast. Endless scrolling can overwhelm the mind, making it so much harder to focus on creating something original. Have you ever found yourself on TikTok or Instagram Reels and you wanted to only use it as a pastime? Scroll one video, that one's funny. Scroll another video, that one has a little bit of drama. Scroll another video, hope core. Scroll another video, oh, cute couples. Scroll another video, cute animals. Scroll, 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 scroll. And now you've been on social media for maybe 30 minutes, an hour. Yeah, that's known as doom scrolling. Just scrolling to your own detriment. Sitting there, brain rotting, taking in so much information at once. So much information that your brain has to sit there and process and process and process. And your brain is so busy trying to process the information that you just fed it, it definitely can't give you anything far to put out. That's not going to mimic something that you just fed it. There has to be a balance in how you utilize social media. Take the time to mindfully curate your feed and mess with your algorithm. Like the things that feed your creativity, like the things that spark your interest. You want to be able to highlight the things that work well for you and say no to the things that don't. You can say, don't recommend this channel, don't recommend this page. I'm not interested in this because it doesn't match my vibe. Fine tuning your algorithm will make your social media for you, because at the end of the day, it is your social media. If you don't mess around with your algorithm, they're just going to give you what's popular within your local area, within that space. And that could be anything from drama, negativity, photoshopped people that aren't reliving realistic lives. You're just seeing the highlight reels of everybody's life, and that's not what you need. Now that we've gotten into what is mindful consumption and what are ways that we don't mindfully consume, let's talk about some practical tips on how we can curate what we take in and aligning it with our creative goals. In regards to people and settings, you want to learn how to set boundaries. Set limits on how much time you spend consuming media. You can use a screen time tracker. Like, I spend a lot of my time on TikTok per day. And I saw that there is a way that you can set a timer, and that timer will give you a key code that you'll have to place whenever you get to a certain amount of time. At first, I had it set to 2 hours. And 2 hours is a lot of time in my day. There's 24 hours in the day. I spend a good 8 to 9 hours of that sleeping. Women are actually supposed to get a good 9 hours to sleep. 8 hours is more formidable for men. So I try my best to get 9 hours of sleep. 9 hours of my day sleep. 8 hours at my job. That's already 15 hours of the 24-hour day gone. I spend the first 2 hours of my day connecting with myself, grounding myself. I'm already at 17 hours. In the remaining 7 hours that I have, I spend 2 hours minimum on TikTok. 2 hours. That means I'm leaving myself 5 hours to get other things done. But in those 5 hours, of course, I want to eat something. I want to watch a show. I have to study for school. I spend lots of time studying for school, probably a good 3 hours per day. That leaves me with 2 hours left to do how many other things out of the many things that I have to do per day, because I didn't set boundaries for my social media consumption. So definitely utilize screen time trackers. You can do a mindful media fast. I was watching TikToks. How ironic. I was watching TikToks and one came across, and it was a snippet of Brittany Broski's podcast. She had asked the question of, when you have to sit and think of who you are and what your purpose is, what comes to mind? And she said, if nothing is coming to mind and you're really struggling to figure out who am I, take a break from social media. I had watched that video in my car, parked outside my mom's, fresh after work. I got off of work at midnight and I was still in my car at 1:11. Angel numbers. So I took it as a sign. I deleted all of my social media. Set those boundaries. Step away from your phone a bit to check in with what you would want, with what your purpose would be, without any of the outside chatter and noise. In being mindful, you have to make wise and mindful decisions. Consciously choose forms of media that you know would be beneficial to your mental health, along with your brain health. Things that you know would be beneficial to you. Don't just soak up anything for the experience. I used to be really impulsive in ways like that. Like I just wanted to experience something. Like I'm down for it. It's a different experience. Not all experiences are worth experiencing. Sometimes we don't have to do it for the plot. You can ruin your plot winging it for the plot all the time. So choose wisely. The key is being selective with what fuels your imagination, with what fuels your energy. If something feels off, listen to your first mind. Your body will know what is best for you. Detox from negativity. Take some breaks from any negative or toxic inputs that surround you often. Within my spaces that I said, I had those coworkers that were consistently complaining. Whenever I started to realize that I was harboring some kind of resentment and I was having some form of despair whenever the conversation of this person being around me was coming about, I knew that if I wanted to enjoy my workspace and still have good energy at my work, I had to confront this and set a boundary. The next time that one of them complained to me, I had brought up, do you realize that every time I speak with you, you're complaining about this space? And although I understand your frustrations and I understand that this isn't where you ideally would want to work often, this is where we both work. And I would rather try to look at the positive sides of things here instead of harboring on negative conversations regularly, because it doesn't make me feel better, but I still have to clock in here every day. You can word that differently depending on who you're speaking with, but I just had to say it like it was. I had to say it like it was because it was becoming too much. And thankfully they respected that. And now I detoxed the negative conversations from my workspace. Once you're able to detox, focus on consuming the opposite of the negatives. Focus on consuming uplifting, motivational content, things that can spark ideas for you, motivate you to work harder, push further, not things that put you in stifling, limiting belief systems. Here's where we're going to talk about how mindfulness can play as a filter for your consumption. Some mindfulness practices that you can be more aware of can be practicing some mindful media breaks that I brought up in the previous section. Right now, I'm taking a break from social media so I can truly see what comes from my own brain when it comes down to something that I want to be authentically mine, uniquely mine, something that I want to represent me. I have to know, what do I want to have represent me? Not something that I want to have that represents me in a way that fits in with others. I want something that's authentically mine, something that I would be proud to put my name, my face, my whole self into and on. So I don't need any outside subconscious feeders clouding that identity for myself. So I have to only be dealing with me, myself, and I for the time being. And I'm taking this long media break. I really think I'm going to go until the end of the year. Go into the end of the year, tap into myself, be more connected and be present instead of being connected to the whole world through the internet. Check in with yourself. Whenever you're scrolling, consuming, taking anything in, before consuming any content, ask yourself, is this something that is inspiring to me? Is it something that is comforting to me? Or is it something that's just going to drain my energy? Is this aligned with who I want to be? Would the higher version of myself be consuming content like this? Do I feel like that's something that my higher self should be exposed to in order to become that version that I want to be? Having this self-awareness can reduce mindless consumption. There is a shift when you go from passive to active consumption. The transition from passive consumption, where you're just absorbing whatever comes your way, to active, purposeful consumption is actively seeking out content that feeds your mind in the ways that you want to feed it. We've all been told you are what you eat. If you eat your vegetables, you get your protein in, you get your fruits in, vitamins in, your body's going to be a well-oiled machine. If you're not sleeping right, having sodas, having a bunch of candy and processed sugar, saturated fat, processed foods, it's going to reflect on your skin. It's going to reflect on your energy. It's going to reflect on your body. The same thing goes for what you feed your mind. So when you actively seek out things that are going to feed your brain positive things, uplifting things, knowledgeable things, that's when you begin to shift from passive to active consumption. Instead of passively scrolling through social media, seek out specific things that align with your creative interests, your creative field, whether that being art, design, or literature, or even if you're into medical things, you want to look up more medicinal students learning things. There's people that make educational videos that are cool or on social media as well. You can follow things that line up to those interests. In being active with your consumption, I do want to highlight how it can also be negative. You can be too active in trying to consume positive content. You can be too active in retuning your algorithm. Me wanting to renovate and redo how I do things, I spent hours planning how I was going to do things, planning how I was going to be more active in the things that I did. That's all things that can be detrimental to you. Do it in segments. It's not a race, it's a marathon. Anything that I have spoken to you about, it's never a race. It's a marathon. So you want to keep going little by little. Implement those active habits. Implement the active subconscious health care. Ever since I deleted social media, I really was able to feed into myself and see what makes my body feel good. I don't want to see the 10,000th headband. I don't want to see the extra fancy curling iron. I don't want to see that hair steamer. I don't want to see that new vacuum. I don't want to see that stepper. I don't want to see these headphones. I have headphones.
We can nurture our creativity.
I have a workout mat and weights that I use.
Content that inspires, uplifts, and
I have a hair dryer that I sit on the counter. It gets the job done.
To really cater to
I'm
yourself.
looking at what I have and not too much of what I don't.
You would go to the gym to maintain your body,
and it's definitely put things into perspective. And I've utilized so many more things around me
all the same.
Instead of thinking that I need something else. No, I've been innovative with what I have.
You to be
I was
intentional
really
with everything that you take in.
The things that
every sentence that you read, every video that you watch, every conversation that you engage in. I'm not saying to be paranoid and anxious about, oh, is this conversation good for me? Is this conversation bad for me? I just will want you to go into it with the knowledge of being more aware of the energies of things. Turn on your awareness a little bit up, to crank it up a little bit. And I challenge you to do that for a week. Have your negativity blockers on for a week. Whether you have to delete social media, whether you have to set a boundary with somebody, do that. And I want to see how you feel in 7 days. Thank you so much for tuning into another episode of Creative Conversations with GG Mompiere. I have learned so much about the mind, about ways that creativity can be fueled, how creativity can be suffocated, how literally our own minds can be so beautiful, it's so chaotic. It's like the water. It can be calm and tranquil and welcoming, and it can also be turbulent and catastrophic. In all of it, I have learned so much. And as I wrap up this season of Creative Conversations academically, part of me is very curious to see how far I can take it personally. Thank you so much for tuning in. And as always, stay creative, stay mindful, and I hope to see you again soon.